Good morning or afternoon or evening, whenever you might be tuning in here on YouTube to watch this presentation. In fact, I'm recording this as a second presentation. I shared this information with the church that meets here at the Masonic Home where I work some weeks back, and the recording didn't go through, and so some residents here asked if I could re-record and make it available to them online. And also I wanted to make this presentation available to those of you in the Milpitas Adventist Church who have supported this project, as well as those who've done so through the GoFundMe campaign, which was spoken of quite a bit on Facebook. So here's a recording kind of updating you on what was done and kind of how things developed in my trip over to Europe to get my mother-in-law, and ultimately also to do what good we could do together for the people of Ukraine as they fled their homeland for safety. In some sense, then, you might call this a Ukrainian report. That's what I have titled it. Things really got started when, really before the war in Ukraine began. We saw that things were getting worse, and so my wife and I, who is from Ukraine but is American now, her mother is still there in Ukraine, and so we had told her, you should come and be with us until all this gets resolved. And so she went to get her passport and to pack and to get ready, and she found that her passport had a valid U.S. visa in it still, but that her passport had expired. And so she went to get a new passport, but they made a grave mistake, which ultimately meant that she had no passport she could use. They were going to make her a new passport, but the very next day the war started. So she has this useless passport, and the new one is not coming either. And so very rapidly, as things began to unfold, the war started. We told her, look, don't wait for that office to open and you to get a passport. It may never open. Just leave. We'll figure it out. And so at that, we decided, if Mom is going to be leaving Ukraine, going, we believe, to Poland, then really someone needs to go and to meet her there and to help her in Poland, and then to get on back to the U.S. And so I quickly made plans one Sunday to get on a plane and to go over to Europe to a place where I could meet her at the border. And here you can see a picture of me with donning my mask, passport, getting on the plane and headed over to Europe. Of course, we've seen lots of maps and pictures of Ukraine and the situation, terrible situation there, but just to get it kind of, pictured in our mind, if we look, we see here in this little map that I've put together that Ukraine is bordered on its east with Russia, and to the north with Belarus, and then to the west you have Poland and Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and then a tiny, a much smaller country with actually quite a large border with Ukraine, given its size, that of Moldova. Ukraine is a very large country, over 40 million, and its land mass is quite large. Has a southern border with the Black Sea, and so of this country, its capital is mostly to the north on the Dnepro River. It's capital is Kiev, or as many pronounce it or mispronounce it, Kiev. And in our situation, in our case, my mother-in-law lived in the city of Dnepropetrovsk, which is often just called Dnepro. And it is right on the Dnieper River. So if you look at the map, you can see here that the Dnieper River basically just runs right down through the middle of the country, all the way down to Crimea and the Black Sea. The problem, of course, given where she was located, is that the Russians and army from Belarus, they were attacking Ukraine from all sides but the west, coming from the north, from Belarus, and then over from the eastern regions, and then up from Crimea. And her city of Dnepro was just kind of right in the crosshairs of all of that. And so we told her, look, leave as soon as you can and by whatever means you can. And so the plan was for her to go west to the city of Lviv. Lviv is in the west, very close to the Polish border. And so our quickly developed plans were for her to get on a train or go by minibus. The original plan was by minibus, but for her to travel from Dnepro to Lviv, and that I would go to Poland and meet her at the border. We didn't know where or how, but we'd have to solve that once I got there. And I had looked at maps and border crossings, and there were 3 main crossing areas closest to that city, and by car you could move between them as need be. So that was the plan. As things developed, though, my mother-in-law was unable to travel by minibus. Maybe that was providential and best, but they decided to have her and others travel by train to the west. Couldn't do that right away, even in these early days of the war. She went to the train station and stayed overnight. There were no available trains, and the next morning she was able to get on a train, and she was headed to Lviv. I, meantime, had gotten on a plane and was headed to Switzerland, from San Francisco to Switzerland, and then from Zurich was going to fly into Warsaw and then make my way to the Polish border. But as I traveled, I had stayed a bit in touch with my mother-in-law indirectly through my wife, who was communicating with her a few times a day. And we learned that the train had indeed moved west and gone to the Polish border and to the very city of Lviv, but at least at that time, the Polish government was overwhelmed, and they closed that border so that my mother-in-law could not cross over. And ultimately it was decided that she should take the train and go south to Hungary. Here you can see a picture that was taken with my mother-in-law and the pastor in her city, who she had come to know, who was kind enough to help her. This next picture just kind of shows the direction of my going, as I mentioned, flying from San Francisco to Zurich and Zurich to Warsaw and then to the border. Once I got to Zurich, my airline was kind enough to reroute me, and so instead of going to Warsaw, I was rerouted directly to Budapest. And so now I know, well, we're at least knowing what country to go to, but I'll be in Budapest and Mom will be somewhere towards Hungary, maybe crossing the border. Should I go to the border to meet her? In these times you have to kind of make your plans as they develop, but here you can see some pictures I took on my way, a picture leaving Zurich, and then a picture as I arrived into Budapest at night. I must say, this next picture is here for a reason. This man you see in his car, and he's got his hand to his mouth. He's quite perplexed. And indeed, when I arrived in Budapest, I was very perplexed. I knew I would need a rental car while there, and so I made arrangements for a rental car. But because this was a sudden change from going to Warsaw to suddenly now going to Budapest, when we arrived, it was late at night, and the kiosks that would sell me a new SIM card to put in my phone to use for maps and for contacting people and getting hotel and everything, they were closed. I had no way to buy a SIM card to have phone connection in the country yet. Well, I had my rental car. I had arranged for that, and so I got my rental car. It's nighttime. Can't read the signs, don't know the city, have no GPS to guide me even to the place I wanted to go, which was downtown Budapest. It was quite a journey, let's say, at night, to be driving around asking people. The best methodology I finally arrived at for finding my way was to drive to a gas station and there to ask them, using just the Wi-Fi connection, to ask them, how can I get down towards Budapest? And they give me partial directions, and I go as far as I could. Then when I was lost again, I'd pull in a gas station and continue the journey. And it took a couple hours, but finally I got there to Budapest and was able to check into a hotel for some much needed rest. The next morning, I was in communication with my wife and was so pleased to learn that my mother-in-law had indeed, the train had come to the Hungarian border and had continued right on and had come to Budapest. And my mother-in-law was in Budapest, right in the city where I was. So what a blessing. How good to learn that that was the case. The problem, of course, was where to find her, what train station or what location. I didn't know what train station. Later I learned which train station she had come to. And it is the Western train station there in Budapest. And here you can see a picture of it. They are now doing construction on this train station. They're rather proud of it. It was designed by the same person who made the Eiffel Tower. And so they are restoring it now. But at that time, I didn't know how to contact my mom and my mother-in-law. I call her mom. But we were able to reunite, and we did so by the gracious, really gracious work of the people in Hungary. I was so impressed with the people and their response to this terrible war. In short, average citizens. It's not a government enterprise. The government's doing many good things, as is Poland and Slovakia, other countries. But average citizens in Hungary wanted to help the many refugees flowing into their country. And they started basically some websites that were like, hey, if you want to help a refugee or a refugee family, you let us know. What's your name, what's your address, what's your phone number, and tell us how many refugees you are willing to take, and then we'll try and pair you up with someone. And so if you had a small home, you might say, well, I can take one, or medium two, maybe 3, 4. And then people would go to the train station. These same people and others who are working with them would go to the train station and set up tables and bring computers. And as refugees came over from Ukraine, they were there asking them, okay, do you have a place to stay? If not, how many people are in your group? What kind of living arrangements do you need? And so they were pairing up willing hosts with refugees in need. Again, not a government program, just average people wanting to help. I was so touched by their generosity and care in these trying times. I shot a little video of some people working one of these little stations where they were asking people and using computer to pair them up, and show this for you to look at here now. Well, that pairing is good, but how did it come about for my mother-in-law? Well, my mother-in-law had made friends with another woman on the train, and they had decided, well, let's stick together. So when they came on their train to Budapest, they exited the train and came to the computer station with pairings and said, well, we'd like to stay together. And at this point, I'd like to introduce you to two people who can play a large role in the ongoing story. The first is a woman named Gabriella. Gabriella, she works right at the international airport there in Budapest, but that's her official work. But as an individual, she is just a kind-hearted person. And she just said to herself, she said, I finished my work. She was working evenings many times, and she said, I finished my work that evening, and going home, I said, you know, there's all these refugees coming into our country. I've got an extra bedroom. I should help. And just on the spur, she, instead of driving home, she drove to the train station. And she arrived there and she said, hey, I'll take somebody. You got somebody. Well, that brings us to a woman named Victoria. Now, those of you who know me know my wife's name is Victoria. It's with a K and a Y-A. But Victoria was someone working there at the train station that night. Victoria works over with SAP Hungary. It's an IT company. So she's into computers and all of that, and she was manning a computer or womaning a computer, helping anyone who needed help to get paired up with a host. Well, Gabriella had come and said, I don't know if she was on their computer or just said, I'm here, I'm willing. But Victoria helped Gabriella to get paired up with my mother-in-law and her new friend that she'd made on the train. And so the next morning, I was able to hear from my wife, and she said, well, Mom's there in Budapest, and she's with a host, and here's her name and phone number and address. And of course, it didn't take me long to get in my car and to go see Mom. I hadn't seen her for some time, and it was so good to finally be reunited. And here you can see Mom on the left with Gabriella and her traveling companion. Well, that solved one problem, right? Meeting up with Mom. But we still had that passport problem. By mistake, before her new passport was in hand, as you can see, her Ukrainian passport had been canceled. They had punched the dreaded holes in it, which you never want to have until you have your other passport. It was just a mistake, but now we've got to live with it and find a way around it. And I thought, well, what I'm going to do is, I can't get much traction there with the U.S. Embassy to get this resolved, and besides, it's not their passport that's ruined, it's Ukrainian. So I thought, I can't get access to the Ukrainian Embassy by their website or by phone, but I'm just going to drive there. And so I drove to the Ukrainian Embassy, which you can see pictured here. There was not a soul to be seen. No one at that time. Now, these were the early days of the wars. A few days later, there were many people there and police cars stationed outside and whatnot. But when I went, there was not a soul. Looked deserted. But for some drying flowers and candles and signs that people had made, giving their sympathy and prayers for the country that they had placed there outside the gate. There were some signs on the door of the embassy, but the English portion really didn't tell me much to do. There was more written in Russian and Ukrainian and Hungarian, but that wasn't readable by me, and so it seemed rather clear that the embassy was shut down. And I turned and went to get in my car to leave. I think I was already in my car. And I looked just out of the corner of my eye, and I saw a woman, I think she was probably in her 30s, and her son, who came up to the embassy, and they were reading and standing at the same door and reading the same sign. And as many of you know, in my rush to leave, I had just enough time to mention to some of you here at the Masonic Home in Acacia Creek, if you want to donate some funds, I'm going to be spending some of my own money to help people that I meet in Hungary, or I thought Poland at the time. And if you want to join me in that, do so, and I'll use those funds. And I let my church know, and then I started a GoFundMe, and boy, you all were so supportive, just like the Hungarian people. You wanted to do something to help. And so I had collected a number of funds, and I was staying in touch with people back here to know what the exact amounts were. And so when I would meet people, I would help them. And I'll say more about that as our presentation goes on. But I saw this woman out of the corner of my eye, and I thought, well, here's someone likely who is a refugee. Let me go see if she's okay, if they have food to eat, if they have a place to stay. And so I went and I asked her, I said, are you okay? Do you speak English? And surprisingly, she said, yes. And so I said, are you all right? Do you have a place to stay, food to eat? Yes, we're okay. Thankfully, we've got some help, and we're here without my husband, but we're here, and so we're okay. And I said, well, I'm sorry, it looks like the embassy's closed, and so I'm sorry if you made the trip. Do you need a ride or anything? Because they had walked. And she said, no, actually the embassy isn't closed. This sign, evidently that you can't read, it says, go around the corner. Now I can read it, 40 meters from here. Go around the corner, and there's another little door on the side. And if you're Ukrainian, well, we'll let you in. So she started around the corner to go to this little door, and I ran and caught up with her and said, well, would you mind if I'm your husband for a few minutes? I'd like to go in too. So we buzzed, and they let her in, and I just put my tail between my legs and went on in behind her. Well, I got in, and there were a few people there, and the lady that worked at the embassy, ladies, there were two, they worked through those people, and finally I'm the last one standing there, and thankfully she spoke English. I explained our situation about how Mom's passport had been canceled by mistake. She couldn't believe that kind of mistake had been made. It's just a big no-no in passport processing. You never punch cancel a passport until you have the new one in your hand. But they'd done it, and the war had started, and there we were. And her good news for me was, there's absolutely nothing we can do. Your mom is without hope. She was very sorrowful, but she said, there's just nothing we can do. There's just one place that makes our paper for the passports, makes our passports, and she said, I don't even know if that place has been bombed or but it's certainly not working. We have no booklets. We can make no new passports, even if we wanted to, and we would like to. But your mom is stuck. I don't know what to do. Indeed, we didn't know what to do. But I did work with them and try to get some additional paperwork, which they helped me with. I was very thankful to them for that. But ultimately, as you'll learn, I was not able to get my mother-in-law out of Hungary at that time. This next picture is a picture just a few days later, same embassy, looking, the direction towards Budapest, on that side where that little door is. And you can see by then, just a few days later, it wasn't deserted, there was a line. Many people starting to all flow, come to the embassy, find out what do we need to do. And one of the first things that I learned from my own experience that they needed to do, one of the first things you need to do is to, if you're coming particularly with a child that you need documentation for, first thing you need to do is get a passport photo. You can bring that back, and we won't make a passport, but we'll make a document with a photo that at least serves for identification purposes. And the thing about the Ukrainian embassy is it's not in downtown Budapest. It's not like the U.S. embassy, with huge building. It's kind of outside the city. You need to take a train and then maybe walk a lot or take a taxi. And if you're a refugee, time is precious and money is precious, and those necessities were not good news. And so what I had learned is that when these people, these refugees, had taken a train or a taxi to get to the embassy, they were going to come, they were going to stand in line, they were going to wait, only to be told, go back out, get back in another taxi, if there's one there, if not, get walking, and go all the way back into town to get a passport photo made. And it occurred to me very quickly, if I want to be helpful to many refugees, I should just be their taxi from here. Because so many of them are going to need to go, turn right around and get pictures. And by the time they get back to get a picture made, and it's made, they're likely not going to get back in time for the embassy to still be open. So they'll waste 2 days and double the trip and double the money. And so that's what I did on some days. I stayed there, and when people would come out, I just asked them, do you need a passport photo? Yes, get in the car, let's go. Off we'd go, they'd get that, I'd bring them back. Also, quickly it became evident that you get paired with those who you most easily can help, and rightly so. Many of the Ukrainian refugees I could not speak to, right? They only spoke Russian or Ukrainian. There was one group of refugees who I could easily speak to, though, and these were often the refugees that were coming who were in fact from Nigeria or other African countries. It turns out that many people from Africa or other countries come to Ukraine, had been coming to Ukraine for years, for education. They will come and get a doctor's degree or a business degree, some other degree that perhaps the quality of education is better there than in their own place back home. And the price is cheaper than trying to come to the US or to come to Hungary, for example. I spoke with a man there at the airport about this, and he said, you'll see. Lots of people from Africa, many from Nigeria, that are refugees here, and he said it's because they went to Ukraine to study. He said it's 1/10 the price. So they pay $4,000 a year there, and $40,000 here, where you can choose. So with the war, there were many people from these African countries that were suddenly displaced, but really having no means, no finances to return to their home, and yet finding it very difficult to find their way in other countries. So they needed help just as any citizen national to Ukraine. This next picture is of me with just such a man who I helped there at the embassy, and then from the train station later. He needed to get paperwork for his daughter. He had lived in Ukraine for over 20 years. He went as a student, and then he married a person in Ukraine, had this beautiful child, and been living there for 20 years, and now all that's gone. His life, his home, his work. He said, it was really amazing sometimes to talk to these refugees. I'm not sure that I could have as cheerful an outlook as so many of them did. I mean, many, yes, there were many that were just kind of shocked. They really hadn't gained their perspective on their circumstance. But others still could laugh, still were looking for the bright side, still were hopeful. It was a real testament to people with a sense of patience and perseverance and hope. And this man was like that, you know. He knew the dire circumstance he was in, but he said, look, we will find a way. We're going to get through this. And I asked him if I could take his picture when we were done, but did a little video with him. But he was there just getting settled and not sure whether he would stay there in Hungary or if he would continue on to another country. Well, that was one way that I could help some people in Hungary. I would go to the embassy, meet them, help them to go get their passport photos. I would usually give them some money if they were an individual and said, yeah, I'm really struggling. I would give them $50. If it was a family, I would give them $100. Did that with a number of individuals. I also quickly became aware that I could do a lot of good. We could do a lot of good. I want to be sure and use the correct pronoun there, because much of what I did was only possible because of your generous donations to GoFundMe or here from the home or from the Milpitas Church. So with those funds, I also wanted to do some good at that train station where Mom had been helped, and many thousands more were coming through every day. So I used my car. I went to their version of Costco and would buy all of the kinds of things that someone on the run, so to speak, would need. Diapers, baby food, hand lotion, water, all kinds of things. Pet food. People, as you will see, are traveling with pets too, and they need to be cared for. And being a pet lover, I spied that out pretty quickly and saw there wasn't a whole lot of pet food being given. But here's a picture of me with some of the people that I worked with there at the train station many days. I was there for a total of about 2 weeks, and after it became clear that only a portion of my time could be spent trying to be of help to Mom, I would spend my other portion of my days trying to be helpful to people in the same boat as she was, so to speak. Here I am with an aid group. I don't even know what group this was. I think it was a religious group working there at the train station, but I came day after day and I would see the same people there day after day, serving soup, serving food. And so I knew this group is here doing good, and if they're doing good, then I want to partner with them because they're doing exactly what I would like to do, except they're the ones with the kitchen and they're the ones buying these supplies. And so I remember this fellow in green, he was kind of overseeing this group that was right outside the train station. And I went and I gave him $100, and he was so happy. He was like, oh man, we will put this to such good use. And I came the next day and I was bringing supplies to another group, and he came running over and he said, this is a $100 guy. It was kind of funny. But day after day, yeah, they were there serving soup and something else to go with it. And the people were being helped, and so I'm glad that we could help that group. Many others were helping. Again, I was so impressed with the Hungarian people and their response, and I'm sure their continued response. This next slide, you can see on your left, this was a man. He is nicely dressed. You could tell he was a business professional. And they had a little tent, and they were there day after day serving really nice sack lunches. A sandwich, apple, other things. I went over to him. I said, are you heading up this? Yeah, I'm heading up this group. What is it? He said, well, he gave me his business card. So I work with a huge catering company. We do catering for big companies, professional, and high-end meals and whatnot. But he said, with the war, we've taken a portion of our company and we've said, let's do things for the refugees. So he said, I'm over this task, this need. We make these sack lunches and bring him here every day. Every day, you see him there, handing out food. How great is that? People in the picture in the middle there, that's the Red Cross. They were under a portion of the train station that was being renovated, but they were there and providing support, doing a good work. And then here on the right, you can see I'm the one in the hoodie on the left, but here a few days had opportunity to work with ADRA, who also on different days, not every day, but on different days, they would go and also had a table and put out things for refugees to take as needed. There was no limit in people. Generally, were very thoughtful in their taking, knowing there were other people behind them who would need, so don't be greedy. It was a neat thing, and the monies that you provided allowed me to fill up my car with groceries and whatnot. It usually was about $1,000. And so I'd do that $1,000 and make one or two trips some days. And I would just go to any aid group that was there, whether it was ADRA or some other group, and say, you need supplies? And here they are. And the police even got to know me a little bit, and they'd let me park right by the train station, even though there was no parking in that area. They knew I was going to bring supplies in. This next little slide is has a little video, just so you can kind of see some of the tables that were set up and people coming and getting items from them. Another thing that was done, I already mentioned about how they'd set up a website where people could say, I'm willing to host 1 or 2 or 3. Well, that's good, but you've got to get the people from the train station to the host home. And it would be a little bit problematic to that whole scheme to say to the host, oh, and you also need to get off work, get in your car, and come pick them up. They had the foresight to know, well, can we have some people acting as taxis and then some people acting as hosts? And so there was a little lemonade stand-like booth made up that said, rides or taxis in multiple languages. And again, just average Ukrainians, not government workers, not aid workers, just average people heard about it and said, okay, I'm going to go to the train station, I'm going to stand there, and when we have someone who needs a ride, I'll give it. And here on the picture on the left, you can see behind this little white booth, there's a dozen or so of us there. We'd stand there for hours. Trains would usually come through every few hours. And you never knew, right? They may come with 100 people, they may come with 800 people. But it's going to get busy. And they're going to need taxi drivers, and so they would have them move from the computer station indicating how many people were in their group. Then they would send them over to the taxi station if they needed a ride, which most would, and then we would tell them, get in my car, and off we go. Well, of course, by this time I had my SIM card in my phone, and I could travel so freely around the country. I gotta tell you, wow. I really learned how wonderful phones and computers are and GPS is on this trip. Because after trying to drive and find your way without it, and then slipping that SIM card in and seeing, Google Maps come up, oh my goodness. I felt like a bird set free from a cage. I could drive in this country I'd never been in with ease. Just instantly, it was wonderful. And so that's what I'd do. I would go and again get people in my car and off we go. And you can see here on my right in this picture, I'm with again more Nigerians. This group of four, three Nigerians and one Ukrainian girl. They were had all been students. I felt so bad for these guys from Nigeria. The one in the middle in the brown coat, he had just been in the middle of his final semester. So 4 years, he's about to graduate. The war starts, all for naught. 4 wasted years. I don't know how he could possibly, get credit for that time and graduate somewhere else. It just such a shame. All three of them were students, and they come from Nigeria. And the girl on the right, her parents were from, I always say it wrong, I'm going to say Mariupol. It's the city that it's on the Black Sea and has been completely destroyed. It is the city with the theater that was bombed, and 150 some people, I think, died in that one bombing. But it's a city still under siege, and the defenders of the city are running out of ammunition. It's just a catastrophe in that city. And when I spoke with her, she said, I had to flee Ukraine. I was living separate from my parents, and I've not heard from any family or friends in the city since the war started. So she was quite worried, and she was left her country and really didn't know what was next. But I was their taxi driver there at the airport, at the train station. Took them about 30, 40 minutes outside the city to someone who had agreed to be their host all four of them. Interestingly, later I did run into them at the train station. They had come back for some reason, and as I had taken them in my car to their host, I would talk with them about their life and what they were doing and where they were from in Ukraine and whatnot. And she said, things go from bad to worse. She said, I'm traveling with my cat. I just couldn't leave my cat. And I brought my cat, and he was in unfamiliar settings, and he jumped down from the second floor, and he broke his leg, and now he needs surgery, and they're willing to give me a discount, but it's still so expensive, and we don't know what to do. And so when we got to their place to stay, I had to give some money to help with those surgery costs. And when I met them a few days later, I said, "How's the cat?" And she said, "We got to have the surgery, and he's still limping along. He's not even, at that time, he's not even limping along, but he's got his cast, and he's doing better." And she showed me a picture on her phone of the surgery. So that's the surgery you helped pay for. But I felt better knowing a cat had made it and was doing well. Here's a little picture of me loading up the car, or not a picture of me, but a picture of the car loaded up with goods from Tesco, and getting ready to head to the train station. When I was talking with the director of ADRA there in Hungary, he said, occurs to us one thing that might be helpful. It's a little more expensive purchase thing to hand out, but it can be very helpful. When people are on the run, on the road, their phone is their lifeline. I mean, it's their connection back to people in Ukraine. It's their connection to people they might be meeting and staying apprised of what's happening via internet. And he said, their phones, they don't have places to plug them in on the train necessarily, especially with them packed as they are. Their phones are dying. It would be so nice if we could buy some battery chargers, some UPS chargers that they could have to keep their phones up. And I thought, that's a good idea. So here's a picture of me one day I'd gone out and purchased, I don't remember, 35 of these 10,000, I think, unit battery chargers, and I brought them in. I'd actually brought them in just to see how much charge is on these, because I can't charge 30 chargers. They were half charged, so we were okay. So we took those and distributed them to refugees passing through the train station as well. Well, what next? Well, we did some more good, you and I, while I was there in Hungary. And to talk about that, I'm going to go back to the two people we mentioned before, for Gabriella and Victoria. So I still had a good amount of funds left. I wanted to use it in a good way, and I thought, well, I need to reach out to the people who are doing the work, and clearly those who have organized this website are doing a good work. So I called up Gabriella, who had been host for Mom. At this time, Mom was with me. And I said, Gabriella, from that group, have you met some people who are doing some other really good work that I might work with to do some good? And she said, well, let me check. Well, Gabriella evidently got on the phone, and she called back Victoria, who had helped pair her with Mom. Small world. And she said, Victoria, are you doing any projects? Do you know of anything that we can do? We have some funds that might be used if it's the right kind of project. I want, for those Adventists of you who are watching this presentation, I want you to get the picture. I know ADRA, right? It's our church organization. But Gabriella is not a Seventh-day Adventist, and Victoria is not a Seventh-day Adventist. They're just people in Hungary that wanted to help. And we had never spoken about ADRA. She didn't even know I was an Adventist. But I called Gabriella and said, is there some good I can do? And she said, well, let me call Victoria. And Victoria said, well, there is a nice project. I'm working with a group, and they want to take some medical supplies into Ukraine. Not here in Hungary, but take it back to Ukraine. And so I'm trying to raise money for that, for them. Well, that sounds great, but of course, do your due diligence, right? I need to check out. Gabriella and Victoria have been good people, but is there such a real organization? I'm not going to hand my money over and make someone's car payment, So I got in touch with Victoria and I said, can you tell me more about this group? Who are they? Where are they doing the group? I need to learn more about it. She said, I don't know them myself. They're this group called ADRA. I couldn't believe it. I said, okay, you don't know ADRA per se, but I know ADRA. So let me do some work and get back to you. So through my contact with the conference president there in Hungary, Robert, you're a great guy. I so much appreciate the help and the partnership we've been able to do to make a difference as the best we can. God helping us. I got in touch with Robert, the conference president, and said, can you check with ADRA? Are they in fact trying to get some medicine together to take in to Ukraine? And the reply was, yeah, that's legit. I know Victoria. Yeah, she's trying to help us. So, wow, full circle. I will work with her. We'll get this done. And as it was, ADRA was planning to gather medical supplies and to take them to a city that is right on the Romanian border. Chernovisti is how I pronounce it. And I'm sure that's the right way to pronounce it because that is how all the foreigners pronounce it. No, I'm not. It's probably wrong. But it is a city that, as all the refugees have been coming through, they'd used up all their medical supplies and they were in great need for more. And so they said, we need to purchase, have someone bring us more medical supplies. And it was going to cost a bit over $3,000, and so I said, hey, we're with it. Because of you, we were with it. And so the next day, Mom and I, we went to this beautiful, beautiful town, whose name I will also slaughter. Szentendre is how I'm going to say it, but it's there on the Danube River. Beautiful town, and cobblestone streets, as you'll see. And it was one day out of these 2 weeks that Mom and I could do something kind of relaxing. We spent the day walking around and just appreciating the town. And then we went over, here's some pictures of Mom and I it was a gorgeous day, and we had a wonderful time there in that town. And then we went back to the pharmacy there in that town, where a kind pharmacist, I wish I knew her name, but a kind pharmacist there, Adventist pharmacist, she had gathered together and boxed up all of these supplies, had them all inventoried and priced out, and we knew I was going to have to make several small purchases to pay for them all on my credit card, and we did that. And Victoria came, and I got to meet her. I had never met her to this point, and so she helped us to make the purchase for those goods. And this next slide shows the goods getting delivered. They took them in from Hungary over to Romania and up to Chernovisti. You can see the group involved there. The guy in the kind of orange pants and black jacket, that was a driver there for ADRA. And you can see the physician there, our doctor at the hospital, very happy to have received these goods. And I felt so good that we could provide them to them. Well, I've been talking for a while here now about the work that we were able to do in Budapest for the refugees, and now I'll turn back to the track of Mom's needs. It had really become clear that we were not going to be able to get everything done while I was there, so that Mom could return with me. And so I needed to turn my attention to trying to arrange for her care until she could come. And I worked again with Robert, the conference president there, and church members. And so the last week that I was there, or the weekend, that Sabbath, my mother-in-law and I, we went to the church in Budapest, which you can see here. And after the service, we met with a wonderful family. She actually is retired from work with ADRA. But she and her husband, wonderful retired couple, they said, well, we'll take your mom in. And so here we are with them, or here's my mother-in-law with them in their home. And they have been so kind. Now a few weeks taking care of Mom, and Mom's really drawn close to them, and it'll be hard for her to leave. But that day is approaching, we know. Since that time, I have left, obviously, Budapest, returned to my life and work here, and have been continuing to work on getting things arranged for my mother-in-law to come. Good news is that even as early as today, I've been texting back and forth with my contacts there, and it seems that here within the next week or so, God willing, everything coming together, Mom will finally get her passport brought out of Ukraine from her city. And once she has that, a COVID test and a plane ticket purchase later, she should be able to join us here. And we are looking forward to that, perhaps in the next couple of weeks. Also, since my return, the work there in Ukraine, for Ukraine, has not ended. I still have some funds, or at this point I should say had some funds. We've pretty much worked through all our funds. If you wish to donate more, I'll put a link in the description so you can do so. There's much more work to be done, and I'm happy to work with those organizations back in Hungary and in Ukraine to provide help to them. But so please donate if you are able or feel impressed to do so. But in terms of ongoing work, things we have done, upon my return, I stayed in contact and said, I've got some additional funds. Let me know. What can we do together? And I was informed that there was a need. I was very happy with this. There was a need for 10 field tents along the Polish, Slovakian, Hungarian, Romanian border, so that as refugees move west, As they approach the border, there are these tents set up where they can get food or get treatment, have some shelter. They're large tents, and I have a picture here, not exactly of the type of tent, but to give you some sense, it's a large tent, and care will be provided in them. And so we already have purchased, just this last week, I wired $11,000 for the purchase of these tents, several $1,000s worth of food for use with the tents, and other supplies and funds supporting those who are supporting the refugees. So our work is continuing, and I say ours again, meaning every word of it. It's only been possible because of your donations, and I really appreciate it that we could do some good for the people there in Ukraine. All total, to date, from the Masonic Homes and Acacia Creek residents, from Milpitas Adventist Church, and various people on Facebook who have learned of my GoFundMe, we raised over $22,000 total, and have been able to help hundreds of people. So I really want to thank you for making that possible. Just a few additional words in closing. I shared this presentation, this message, with my church here at the Masonic Home, where I assist residents for part of a church service. And I closed with this connection, because it seems like a lot of logistics information here, pictures of purchased goods and whatnot, and it can seem like a little strange church service, but it's very connected, I believe. Here in Matthew 25:40, Jesus said, told a parable, and he said, told this story, saying, "The king will reply, 'Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me.'" When we are thoughtful and caring and supportive of people in need, wherever they be and whatever their needs are, it's as if we are helping Christ himself. He has equipped us for good, and it's appropriate that we work for good. And so it goes right along with the work of the gospel to help these in need, and Ukrainians certainly are in need at this time. In 1 John 3:17 and 18, this is written, "But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and truth." And indeed, that's where the rubber meets the road, as we say. Not talking about caring about helping others, but actually doing so. And wanted to help family, but there's so many more in need, and I wanted to be a part of some good for them. And I want to thank you all for extending that work, making it so much more possible. The needs of the Ukrainian people are ongoing, and it's easy to weary and to lose focus. I hope we'll stay engaged by whatever means works for you. I hope you will stay engaged so that we can extend God's love and make a difference in people's lives. Well, that concludes my little presentation on my experience, my motivations for going to Ukraine and doing what I did and doing what we did together. So thank you. Thank you for watching, and God bless you. And if you're local to me, I hope to see you in the near future. But thank you for tuning in, and wish you well, wish Ukraine well, and all of those who are helping Ukraine at this time. All right. Bye for now. God bless.